The Federation of Parents and Citizens Associations is organising a series of public meetings to debate the Education Reform Bill, due to go before State Parliament shortly. Parents from 50 Hunter Region schools attended this meeting at Hillsborough Public. The message from both the Teachers Federation and the P&C organisation was that the Reform Bill has the potential to create vastly different standards of education in this state.
We would see the creation of schools catering for people with the ability to pay. We would possibly see a residual education system in government schools providing education for those that are not able to pay.
There will be a stratified system of education in New South Wales where the very wealthy private schools will do very well, where the very poor private schools will probably not do so well, but the public system will be certainly the poorer relation.
The bill proposes that both government and private schools will have to be registered. Schools will be free to depart from the mainstream system with no obligation to present students for external public examinations. Curriculum, in fact, is probably one of the most contentious issues emerging from the new legislation.
For the first time, the Minister will have the right to set and alter the curriculum. This places curriculum within a political framework rather than an educational one.
Increasingly, in many parts of the world, in fact, the curriculum is being seen to be too important to be left to teachers. Professions aren't necessarily the best safeguarders of professional decisions, that there's always a stake in the profession, and therefore the representatives of the people might be more appropriate to put in charge of those important decisions.
The state opposition sides with the P&C and the Teachers Federation, insisting that curriculum should not be a matter for legislation. Opposition spokesman on education John Aquilina says he'll now seek crossbench support in a bid to win major amendments to the bill.
If it wasn't clear to opposing teams before this encounter, it will be obvious now that the Knights at home are just about unbeatable, allowing for the fact that it was the first game for competition points this year and that the ball handling may not have been up to scratch. Alan McMahon's Chargers did what they had to do and came up trumps 13-8.
There's certainly a lot of rooms for improvement from the guys, but their courage was unquestioned. You know, they just survived wave and wave after attack from North Sydney in the second half, which was just a tremendous bloody, defence effort.
Norths had plenty of chances to get back into the match but came up short at the crucial moment. Newcastle's next opponents are Manly at Brookvale, and it will be a tough battle as the Sea Eagles were scintillating yesterday against Balmain.
By all reports, Manly have pulled the big one out against Balmain away, and it'll be their first home game. And they're a very good side. And they've got some great players in the side. So, our guys also have some good players, and I know there's some areas that we can improve, that we can put some big questions to Manly.
With a clean bill of health except for the odd muscle strain and a couple of bruises, it is an encouraging start to the season for the Knights and also Alan McMahon.
We're quite happy with we got the 2 points. I'm more than happy with the defence that we showed. There's other areas that we can improve on, and I know that we'll improve on them. So, everything's very, very positive for the club.
Owning a relocatable home in a caravan park has seemed the perfect solution for low-income families like pensioners or single parents. But legislation that can be manipulated by some park proprietors is making life miserable for many who've chosen this lifestyle.
I think there are quite a few unscrupulous proprietors. They are manipulating the faults of the legislation to line their pockets.
Jeff Daly is one park proprietor who's been fighting for fair legislation for years, but none of his correspondence to government departments has ever received a reply. He is fighting for justice, both for the residents and the proprietors, because he fears the future of the industry is at risk.
Basically, it's stifling the industry. People are becoming better informed and are shying away from committing themselves to a situation where they have no defence.
Though Housing Minister Joe Shipp made a commitment that during 1989 the government would take action to address the problems, the situation has not improved at some parks. A special report came out last October which recommended a code of practice be drafted. This is expected to be released in June for public discussion. And though the report recommends that pending this code of practice, immediate action be taken to amend a major loophole, that residents be told of the park rules and fees before they move in, so far this too remains unchanged. This particular park ensures the residents are quite happy with the rules and regulations, but in other parks it's quite a different story.
The biggest problem is visitors' fees, high rental rates, and the fact that they cannot have complete control over the sale of their own homes.
Though here residents can advertise their own homes for sale, in other parks they have to leave this, and often a hefty commission, in the hands of the proprietor. Rebecca Skinner, NBN News.
Three-year-old Katrina Goldie of Awabba was a passenger in the front seat of this Falcon sedan when a vehicle heading in the opposite direction cut across double yellow lines and collided head-on with her car at about 6:30 last night. Katrina died instantly, so did the driver of the other vehicle, Charlie Field, 26, of Blackwells Park. Katrina's father was trapped in the wreck. He suffered serious leg injuries and remains in a serious but stable condition in Royal Newcastle Hospital. The only other passenger, Katrina's 6-year-old brother, was taken to the Mater Hospital with minor head injuries. Today, some residents who travel along the troubled Main Road 217 said last night's deaths were the last straw. Cliff Allen drives along here several times a day. He says heavy vehicle traffic is greater than ever and speed limits are being ignored.
The speed of vehicles navigating this road, the way it is, it's like riding on a toboggan. It is really, really bad. I'm just sick of it going on. I just want this road fixed, basically.
Police have been aware of a problem on Main Road 217 for some time, and after 2 recent fatalities, they launched a road enforcement campaign on March the 1st to March the 15th. During that time, they booked 247 motorists for speeding, but after last night's deaths, they feel more must be done.
There was a meeting today at the Lake Macquarie Shire Council involving police and the RTA, and there is a survey going to be taken of that section of roadway with the view of changing the speed limits between Toronto and Morisset.
When you say survey, what will that involve?
That'll be involving looking at accidents, looking at the speeds, the tickets that are got down there, and then, if it need be, change the speed limits.
As if to add weight to the inquiry, the northern end of the Wangi Road was the scene of another serious accident this morning. A truck heading towards Toronto suffered an apparent brake failure and swerved into a side road to avoid hitting cars at a red light. The load shifted and the truck rolled onto a parked car. Inside the car, a woman who had just seconds to scramble out of her seat before it was crushed. She was treated for minor leg injuries. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Luskin Lodge at Luskintyre has earned a reputation as one of the Hunter Valley's premier studs, producing champion after champion. The most well-known Luskin star took out the 1976 two-year-old Grand Slam, the Golden Slipper, the Sires Produce and the Champagne Stakes. Owner Jim O'Neill has transformed the old dairy side over 17 years into one of the best breeding grounds for brood mares. The stud has 16 stables, stallion run and foaling yards on just over 45 hectares overlooking the Hunter River. Included in the sale is a 50-square home. Mr O'Neill says ill health has forced him to move from a racing industry paradise.
I'm getting a little bit too old to run it properly, and I did have a heart attack late January, and I feel that it's a good time to call quits.
The sale will also mean the O'Neills will be selling off most of their breed stock at the Easter sales. However, Mr O'Neill is quick to point out his move from the tranquil pastures of Luskin Lodge will not end his involvement in racing.
I am going to keep 3 or 4 2-year-olds that I've got in work at the moment and hopefully go to the races again and start enjoying something.
It's expected bidding on the property will go close to the $1 million mark when it goes before the auctioneer next Monday. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
The company, Hunter Security, operates from this building on Government Road at Weston. Staff at the fortified warehouse were reluctant to talk publicly about the company's affairs. However, it's understood the Supreme Court placed the business in the hands of a provisional liquidator late last night. Accountants from Pete Marwick were equally reluctant to give details about discrepancies in the company's books.
Really, at the moment, all we're trying to do is to secure the premises and the assets, try and work out what's been going on in the past.
However, they did admit that they called the police. In Cessnock, detectives said the firm's books were first checked by a major subcontractor to the company, the Bramble Security Group, when their suspicions were aroused at the beginning of the week.
The director of the company, Alan Watson, was due to meet with various officials from Brambles that morning. The last movements that we actually have of Mr Watson is that he took 2 of his children to school that morning and hasn't been seen since that time. He didn't contact any member of the company or his family for 48 hours, but has since been in telephone contact with various members of his family since then.
Do you have any idea where he called from?
Not at this stage. We're told the calls were STD, but we're still making inquiries as to where he's actually is at the moment.
Do you believe that his disappearance is linked with the financial situation at the company at present?
Well, obviously, we feel that there's got to be some connection between the two.
Mr Watson's family lives opposite Hunter Security's headquarters. If they were home, they too had nothing to add to the mystery. Hunter Security employs about 30 staff to operate armoured cars and escort vehicles as far north as Queensland. Almost all the work involves transporting large amounts of cash. Despite its modest setting, we understand that Hunter Security is not unfamiliar with amounts of more than $1 million a day. So when police say the discrepancy is of a substantial order, it's easy to understand why they're so concerned. Late today, detectives at Newcastle confirmed that the Regional Crime Squad had joined the investigation. 4 officers are making inquiries in Newcastle and 4 more are working in the Cessnock Western area. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Norman Ross management weren't available to say why they were moving out of the Newcastle CBD. The action itself, however, is statement enough. Like many other businesses, the large retailer is going where the people are, specifically a new retail park near the Garden City shopping centre at Katara. In fact, businesses have been voting on Hunter Street with their leases for 6 years.
Well, 6 years ago, around here, it was quite busy. It was hard to get a vacant shop of any description.
There are now dozens of empty premises between Derby and Tudor Streets. Hunter Street has become a victim of its own heritage. It's reputedly the longest shopping street in the country. That used to work when houses backed onto it. It doesn't now they're gone.
It was fair to say that Newcastle had entered a stage of urban decay. That's why we set around in 1986, within weeks of being elected, the aldermen of the council, to their very great credit, each and every one of them, set about having discussions with the community about how to revitalise the city.
Retailers were struggling before December the 28th. The earthquake, however, has shaken even some of the stayers out. Pacific Dreams is in a state rail building badly damaged by the earthquake. The SRA doesn't want to repair the shop and is only offering short-term leases on its many other properties fronting the railway line as the area is scheduled for development. Roy Lee is taking Pacific Dreams to Derby Street with regrets.
There is always something about being in the main business district, and being 2 shops off the corner, it was the next best thing of being in Hunter Street for me anyway.
Pacific Dream's move will just escalate the Hunter Street paralysis. The Dart surf ski shop is now also going.
For so many children around the world, they were just part of growing up. Few can deny having at one stage sat down to another action-packed chapter in the lives of the Tracy family and the rest of the crew from International Rescue. But despite all the great storylines, the papier-mâché Thunderbirds cast have probably best been remembered over the years for their somewhat unnatural style of movement and speech, a feature which English actors Andrew Dawson and Gavin Roberts have seized upon in creating their stage show Thunderbirds FAB, which opens at the Civic Theatre tonight.
At the beginning it was pretty difficult, but because we had to look at the videos and look at how the puppets walk and how they move differently from a classic mime marionette. I mean, we studied mime, dance and movement, and but once we sort of cracked that, then it was plain sailing.
Virgil, you take Gordon and Brains with you, and I guess you'll need Thunderbird 4.
Right, Father.
Keep in touch, Scott.
Will do.
We have people who come and see the show in costume. And in the West End they used to come, and we'd have pockets of people in the audience who would know the show, who had been several times, and kind of do the lines with us.
Thunderbird 2 to mobile control and Thunderbird 4. I'm clearing area. Looks like she's going up any second.
But of course there is far more to the Thunderbirds shows than just Scott and Virgil. There's Brains, Lady Penelope and many more. In fact, with an impressive list of mime and drama training to their credit, both Andrew and Gavin enjoy having a crack at imitating TV characters from all walks of life. And it even seems the humble NBN News team isn't sacred.
And that was the news from Tracy Island on Friday the 23rd of March. I'm Scott Tracy.
And I'm Virgil Tracy.
Good night.
If you were to believe this morning's press reports, these old red rattlers could soon be carrying passengers between Newcastle and Cessnock. The idea is to run a train service on Friday and Saturday nights so that people in the coalfields can come to Newcastle to enjoy the theatre, restaurants and shops. The service would be community-based and booked as required to help alleviate the feelings of isolation by Cessnock residents. The only trouble is nobody bothered to put the proposal formally before City Rail's general manager, the man who will ultimately decide if the service is to run.
No, that's definite. This is, again, in its infancy, and I have some doubts that it will be resolved within the next couple of months.
Is there a rail line into Cessnock?
The railway line doesn't go right into the Cessnock township. It's around about half a kilometre short, but there's no station at that location. The station or platform that would be available is some 2 kilometres back at Caledonia.
Democrats' candidate for the seat of Hunter, Chris Richards, is one of the people promoting the idea. While acknowledging some errors in today's report, he's confident the plan can get the go-ahead and will meet with City Rail next Wednesday. City Rail says the door is open, but the numbers have to add up.
We're not in it to run trains for the sake of running trains.
Over many years, the Nelson Bay Marlin Swimming Group have raised in excess of $40,000 for local and Newcastle charities, and at the opening of the 1990 season, they were at it once again. First up, a quick dip to freshen those athletic bodies, and at the same time welcome the guest of honour and beneficiary of today's presentation, the rescue helicopter. For the past 3 years, the Blue Marlins have put their energies outside the pool to raising funds for the Angel One rescue helicopter appeal, and so far they have amassed over $10,000. President of the group, Terry O'Brien, bolstered that figure by handing over a cheque for $5,000 to area manager John Skeens, who acknowledged the work carried out by the Marlins. And in a fitting finale to an early morning dip in the briny, it was time to hit the H2O once again, happy in the knowledge that their fundraising efforts will continue to help the people of the Hunter Valley.
Queues spilled onto the streets and there were delays of up to half an hour. Everyone had the same idea: vote early and avoid the crowds. Sitting member for Newcastle Alan Morris was among the early risers and he joined a queue. Most candidates had a hectic electioneering itinerary today in a last-ditch bid to win the favours of the elusive swinging voters. Independent candidate Lee Morn voted at Wallsend South as one of more than 66,000 voters in the seat of Newcastle. Both Shortland and Hunter each have 72,000 voters determining their electorate's political future. Hunter region seats traditionally have a high voter turnout. Last federal election, all but 4% of the population voted, and with political pundits tipping a close battle in Newcastle and Hunter, electoral officials anticipate another high turnout. Polling booths closed at 6 p.m, with counting now underway. Returning officers predict the first results should start trickling through for the House of Representatives as early as 7 p.m. The more complicated Senate results will take longer to tally, with counting expected to continue until late tonight. Leslie Robinson, NBN News. Talk of seismographs, aftershocks and the Richter scale is reasonably commonplace in Newcastle. Through circumstance, Novocastrians probably know more about earthquakes than any other Australian population. Even so, the experts believe many unanswered fears remain, with much misinformation still circulating. To counter this, Newcastle University brought together some of the country's leading exponents on earthquakes. In a forum chaired by Lord Mayor John McNaughton, the experts traded information with the public. Sessions covered earthquake risk, aftershocks, and the more contentious question of the quake's implications for the city's building codes.
The tanker rolled after clipping a medium strip, spewing its oily cargo across the roadway. Despite quick action by fire officers to clean up the mess, the road surface was damaged and was ordered to be replaced. Contractors and council crews began work this morning and hope to reopen the road late today.
Almost 500 workers representing a dozen waterfront unions left this morning's meeting at the Broadmeadow Police Youth Club determined to prevent the Maritime Services Board selling off port facilities to private enterprise. According to the unions, the board has an agenda for the gradual privatisation of the port through to 1993. Union leaders have vowed to prevent any sell-off and will prepare a strategy of industrial action to stave off the move.
Well, certainly the workers are extremely determined. They're irate that they've been participating in what they now see as being a charade. of engaging in ward restructuring, of seeking to make the instrumentality more efficient, and behind these scenes there's been a hidden agenda. They're extremely committed to seeking to have the government reverse that decision.
Meanwhile, the port will lie idle until 7 a.m. tomorrow. 5 ships are affected in the port and another 5 are waiting off the coast.